The sky above the training grounds was a stormy gray, streaked with clouds that danced across the wind like restless spirits. The smell of wet stone and scorched grass filled the air as the early morning light struggled through the overcast sky. Everyone in the courtyard paused, sensing that something monumental was about to happen. The war dragon, a creature of myth and raw power, had been spotted circling above the mountains, and today was the day it was supposed to submit to its trainer's command. The trainer, a man named Elias, stood tall at the center of the training circle, his boots planted firmly on the damp stone. He radiated confidence, a calm smile tugging at the corners of his mouth, the kind of smile that had won over dragons and humans alike in the past. Beside him, the human girl, Lyra, watched nervously from the edge of the courtyard. She wasn't a trainer, at least, not officially, but she had been drawn to dragons ever since she was a child. There was something about their untamed power, their sheer presence, that called to her in ways words could not capture. A low rumble rolled through the mountains, echoing like distant thunder. Heads turned skyward as the silhouette of the dragon emerged, massive and awe-inspiring. Its scales shimmered in shades of obsidian and steel, each movement reflecting the dim light in an almost hypnotic pattern. Smoke curled from its nostrils, and its wings spread wide as it glided down with the grace of a predator and the authority of a king. Elias's chest puffed with pride, his smile widening. "There it is," he said, voice steady. "Our new recruit. Watch closely, Lyra. This is how you earn a dragon's trust." He raised his hand, giving the signal that he had trained the dragon to respond to. But then, something unexpected happened. The dragon's massive eyes, amber and burning with an intelligence that chilled the marrow, did not focus on Elias. They swept over the courtyard, scanning the faces of everyone present. And then they locked on Lyra. Time seemed to freeze. The wind stilled, the clouds paused mid-drift, and even the faint rustle of leaves hushed, as though the world itself had noticed the shift. Lyra's heart began to pound violently, her stomach twisting in a knot of fear and disbelief. She had never imagined a dragon would ever look at her, not like this. Not with that kind of recognition. Elias's confident smile faltered, the corners of his lips twitching in sudden uncertainty. "Stay back," he commanded, but his voice, though firm, carried an edge of panic. He took a cautious step forward, trying to assert authority, to remind the dragon, and perhaps himself, that he was the trainer. The dragon continued its descent, ignoring him entirely. Each beat of its enormous wings sent gusts of wind that whipped Lyra's hair into her eyes and made her cloak flap violently around her shoulders. Stones skittered across the courtyard, and the dragon's shadow fell over her like a moving eclipse, yet she could not bring herself to move. Some part of her, primal and instinctive, understood that this was not a threat. The dragon landed with a thunderous boom, talons digging into the ground, and then it lowered its head slightly. Smoke drifted lazily from its nostrils, curling in the cold morning air. Its gaze never wavered from Lyra. The courtyard was silent except for the soft hiss of the dragon's breath. Everyone else, including the other trainers and spectators, stepped back, unsure whether to be amazed or terrified. Whispers rose and fell like a tide. "It's never done that before, it always responds to its trainer first." Lyra's legs felt like lead, yet she stepped forward almost unconsciously. The dragon's gaze softened, a subtle recognition passing through its burning eyes. Elias's smile had vanished entirely, replaced by a tension that twisted his jaw. He had trained dragons for years, yet he had never encountered one that defied protocol so blatantly. The dragon lowered its massive head a little more, tilting it toward Lyra as though inviting her closer. Her breath caught in her throat. There was fear, yes, but beneath it, a thrill, an inexplicable connection that made her pulse race with excitement and wonder. Elias took another step forward, ready to assert control, ready to reclaim what he thought was his right. But the dragon didn't move. It didn't roar or snarl. It just watched. And then, slowly, deliberately, it took a single step toward Lyra. The courtyard seemed to hold its collective breath. This was not supposed to happen. Dragons chose their trainers, or so everyone believed. But this dragon, massive and fierce as it was, had chosen differently. Lyra's hand rose instinctively, trembling slightly. She did not know why she was doing it. Perhaps it was instinct. Perhaps it was something deeper, something older and older than herself. Whatever it was drawing her toward the dragon in a way that made the world around her blur into insignificance. And somewhere deep in her chest, she felt the first spark of a bond that would change everything. The courtyard was tense, the air thick with anticipation and the faint tang of ozone from the dragon's smoke. Every eye was fixed on the massive creature that now hovered a mere few feet from Lyra, talons digging into the stone with quiet authority. The crowd's murmurs had died down, replaced by a heavy silence as though even the wind itself dared not interfere. Elias stood frozen, his confident posture crumbling. The proud, assured smile that had been plastered on his face only moments before was gone, replaced by a shadow of disbelief. He had trained dragons for over a decade, but never had one ignored him outright. Not one had ever defied the bond that should have been theirs by birthright or by skill. The dragon's amber eyes, vast and intelligent, remained locked on Lyra. Its massive wings twitched slightly, sending small gusts of wind that made her hair whip around her face. Yet there was no aggression in its stance. No threat. Just curiosity. Lyra's heart pounded, a mixture of fear and fascination twisting together so tightly she thought she might collapse. She didn't move immediately, unsure if stepping forward would invite disaster, or a miracle. The dragon inhaled deeply, nostrils flaring with a faint hiss of smoke, and it shifted its weight, talons scraping the stone ever so slightly. Back, Elias barked, his voice sharp, slicing through the silence. Step away, now. His words carried authority, but the tremor in his tone betrayed the panic he felt inside. He stepped forward, hand raised in a gesture meant to assert control, a command that should have been obeyed without question. But the dragon did not flinch. It did not even glance at him. Instead, it took a deliberate, measured step toward Lyra. The ground trembled slightly under the weight of its claws. Each movement radiated power and intelligence, a calculated decision rather than instinct. The dragon was making a choice that defied every rule of training, every expectation, every certainty Elias had held for years. The people around the courtyard whispered frantically, some in awe, others in fear. It's choosing her, over him, one voice breathed. Another muttered, it shouldn't be possible. Lyra's mind raced. She had dreamed of dragons, yes, imagined riding them, speaking to them in secret moments of childhood fantasy. But this, the sheer enormity of the reality pressing down on her, was overwhelming. The dragon's eyes met hers, unblinking, fiery, intelligent. It was not looking for a trainer, not for guidance, not for obedience. It was seeking something else entirely. Something only she seemed to possess. Her legs moved almost of their own accord, drawn forward by some invisible tether. Every step made the ground shake under the dragon's weight, yet she felt no fear in her feet, only a strange, exhilarating pull. Elias reached toward her, voice rising. Lyra, stop. Don't. But she couldn't hear him over the drumbeat of her own pulse. She reached a hand toward the dragon, trembling, and the creature responded. Its massive head lowered, bringing its glowing amber eyes level with hers. Smoke curled lazily from its nostrils, and a low, resonant hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to vibrate through her chest. The courtyard felt unreal, as though the world had shrunk to the space between her and the dragon. Every movement of the creature was deliberate, intelligent, almost human in its consideration. It wasn't just a beast of war, it was a thinking, feeling entity, and it had chosen her. Elias stepped closer, desperation creeping into his movements. He had trained countless dragons, had earned their respect and loyalty, but none had ever defied him in this way. None had made a decision that overrode instinct, tradition, or expectation. His pride faltered, replaced by a gnawing fear that this moment could unravel everything he thought he knew. The dragon's nostrils flared again, smoke drifting upward in thin streams, curling into the cold morning air. Its massive wings flexed slightly, not in threat, but as if to stretch the invisible bond forming between it and Lyra. She felt the weight of its gaze pressing into her, not with intimidation, but with recognition. A silent message passed between them, unspoken yet clear, I have chosen you. A shiver ran through the spectators. Some stepped back, uneasy at the sight of the dragon defying human authority. Others leaned forward, captivated by the rare, almost magical moment unfolding before them. This was no longer a training exercise. This was a reckoning. Lyra's fingers brushed against the dragon's snout lightly. The scales were warm under her touch, harder than stone but alive with a faint, pulsing energy that seemed to echo her own heartbeat. The dragon lowered its head further, pressing against her hand ever so slightly. Its decision was now undeniable. Elias froze completely. The trainer's control, his years of preparation, his confidence, all of it had vanished in the space of a single, deliberate step. The dragon had made its choice, and it was not him. In that moment, the world tilted. Lyra felt both fear and exhilaration, the thrill of a bond that transcended logic or expectation. And as the dragon's gaze remained unwavering, everyone, trainers, spectators, even Elias, realized that something extraordinary was unfolding. Something no one could have predicted. The war dragon had chosen its companion. And it had chosen her. The courtyard was deathly silent, every spectator holding their breath as if exhaling might break the fragile moment. Lyra's hand trembled as it hovered over the dragon's enormous snout, unsure whether the creature would accept her touch, or decide she was not worthy. The dragon lowered its head slowly, the movement deliberate, each muscle rolling under scales that shimmered like molten metal. Smoke drifted lazily from its nostrils, curling into the chill morning air. Its massive amber eyes, sharp and intelligent, never left Lyra's face. She felt as if it was reading her soul, searching through every thought, every fear, every desire she had never even admitted to herself. Elias stepped forward, his boots scraping against the stone, but the dragon didn't flinch. It didn't even glance at him. His voice rose in a mix of authority and desperation. "Lyra! Stop! Step back!" She ignored him. Something deeper than fear had rooted her in place, a pull she could not resist. Her fingers brushed against the dragon's snout lightly, feeling the rough, ridged texture of its scales under her touch. Heat radiated from its body, but it wasn't menacing. It was alive, vibrant, and aware. A low, rumbling sound emanated from the dragon's chest, a sound that vibrated through the ground and into Lyra's bones. It was a greeting. A question. An acknowledgement. Her heart leapt, and for a brief moment, she forgot to breathe. The dragon's head tilted slightly, nudging her hand with the gentlest pressure. It was not forceful, not threatening, yet the strength behind it was undeniable. The sheer size of the creature pressed reality into her chest, but somehow, instead of fear, she felt connection. The spectators murmured in awe. "It's letting her touch it," one whispered. "It's never done that with anyone outside its trainer." Elias's face had drained of color. He had trained dragons for years, seen every trick and temperament, and yet nothing had prepared him for this. His voice cracked as he tried again, a fragile thread of command. "Lyra, you don't understand. You can't." But the dragon interrupted him with a soft, reverberating hum that shook the air. Its wings flexed slightly, brushing the ground, a subtle display of power that reminded everyone present of the sheer danger coiled beneath its calm exterior. Yet it remained still, attentive, and focused entirely on Lyra. Lyra took a deep, shaky breath and pressed her hand fully against its snout. The dragon exhaled a slow plume of warm smoke, and its chest rose and fell with an almost imperceptible sigh. It was a moment of acknowledgement, of trust, and of choice. It had chosen her. For a second, time seemed to pause entirely. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Lyra felt something stir within her, a spark, electric and alive, connecting her to the dragon in a way she could not yet understand. It was as though the creature could feel her thoughts, her emotions, her very essence. And it had decided she was the one who belonged by its side. Elias's jaw tightened. He had expected this to be his victory, his triumph over nature through years of skill and knowledge. Instead, he felt a cold knot of helplessness twist inside him. The dragon had defied him completely. It was not his to command. It never had been. The dragon's massive eyes softened, the fire within them dimming into something almost gentle, almost tender. It lowered its head even further, brushing its nose against Lyra's palm. The connection deepened, a silent communication passing between them that no words could convey. Lyra gasped, feeling the warmth and the strength of the creature beneath her hand. It was alive, powerful, and magnificent, but it was also trusting her. She realized, with a thrill that ran through her like lightning, that she had been chosen not because she demanded it, not because she had trained for it, but because there was something in her that resonated with the dragon itself. The spectators leaned closer, unable to tear their eyes away. Trainers whispered to one another in disbelief, and even seasoned dragon handlers looked shaken. No one had seen a dragon behave like this, not in a century. Not one that had been raised and trained for war. Elias stepped back, defeated, watching as the bond formed in front of him. The dragon's attention had shifted entirely, and there was nothing he could do to reclaim it. His mouth opened, but no words came. The proud trainer, once confident in his command, was now merely a witness. Lyra's heart pounded, her hand still resting against the dragon's massive snout. The warmth and power radiating from it sent shivers through her, but fear was gone. What remained was awe, wonder, and a profound sense of destiny. This was not just a dragon, it was a companion, a force, and a connection she had never imagined. The dragon hummed again, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through the stones beneath them. Lyra smiled, tentative at first, then broader, as if acknowledging that the impossible had just happened. The war dragon had chosen her. And the world, for everyone watching, had changed forever. The courtyard was electric, charged with an energy that seemed almost alive. Every pair of eyes remained fixed on Lyra and the dragon, unable to tear themselves away from the astonishing sight unfolding. The dragon, enormous and fierce, now crouched slightly, lowering its body to make itself smaller, yet still impossibly powerful. Its massive head remained level with Lyra's, amber eyes locked onto hers as though reading every flicker of emotion across her face. Lyra's hand stayed pressed against the dragon's snout, but now she felt more than the warmth of its scales. There was rhythm, a pulse that matched her own heartbeat almost perfectly. It was as if the dragon was acknowledging her presence not only physically, but spiritually. Every exhale it drew sent subtle vibrations through her arm, resonating in a way that felt like the beginnings of communication. Elias stepped back, jaw tight, hands clenched. Pride, authority, and control had evaporated in the face of what he was witnessing. He had trained dragons for years, raised them, taught them commands, and forged bonds, but none of that mattered here. The dragon had chosen, and it had chosen her. The spectators whispered nervously, some in awe, some in fear. It's forming a bond with her," one muttered. "I've never seen anything like this. Not with a war dragon." Another added, "It's as if it recognizes her, as if it knows her." Lyra's mind spun. She didn't understand why the dragon had chosen her, or how it knew that she was the one, but the connection was undeniable. Her fingers pressed slightly harder against its snout, and the dragon responded, leaning forward ever so slightly, nudging her hand with a soft, deliberate pressure. Its wings twitched, brushing the ground in subtle waves, as if acknowledging the trust forming between them. The dragon hummed, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the stone floor and into her chest. It was not threatening. It was a greeting, an acknowledgement, a message that spoke without words. "I accept you." Lyra's breath caught. She felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, the kind that fills the chest with warmth and the mind with clarity. The dragon's presence was no longer intimidating. It was comforting. Protective. Alive in a way that transcended fear or awe. The impossible realization struck her. This was not just a dragon, it was a companion, a partner, and somehow, she knew it would follow her anywhere. Elias's expression had shifted from shock to something closer to despair. He had trained countless dragons, but none had ever defied his authority so blatantly. He tried to speak, to reassert control, but the words stuck in his throat. The dragon's amber eyes flicked briefly toward him, not in threat, but in polite indifference. It was clear, he was no longer the center of its attention. Lyra felt a thrill course through her. She reached her other hand forward, hesitantly brushing along the side of the dragon's massive jaw. The creature leaned into her touch, a subtle but unmistakable gesture of trust. Its hot breath washed over her skin, and smoke drifted in soft curls around her face. It was powerful, yes, but not dangerous in this moment. It was gentle, careful, aware. The courtyard held its collective breath again. The murmurs had grown quieter, replaced by wide-eyed silence as the reality sank in. This was not training anymore. This was the forming of a bond that defied expectation, tradition, and logic. A bond that was mutual, chosen freely, and undeniable. Lyra's lips parted, and she whispered instinctively, "You chose me." Her voice was barely audible, but the dragon seemed to hear her. Its head tilted slightly, a slow, deliberate nod that sent shivers racing down her spine. The sun, hidden behind the gray clouds for hours, broke through in a single golden streak, illuminating the dragon's scales, making them shimmer like molten metal. It was as if the world itself had marked this moment, recognizing the extraordinary bond forming before it. Elias exhaled slowly, his shoulders sagging. His smile, once confident and proud, had completely vanished. He knew, in that moment, that nothing he could do would change what was happening. The dragon had chosen its companion, and its choice was irreversible. Lyra's heart raced, but fear had been replaced by wonder. The dragon's massive form seemed less imposing now, and more like an extension of the connection growing between them. She could feel its awareness, its intelligence, its raw, untamed power, yet it was all focused on her, accepting her as an equal. She whispered again, softer this time, "We'll be together. I promise." The dragon hummed in response, a deep, resonant vibration that echoed through the stones of the courtyard. And in that sound, Lyra understood something essential. This was the beginning of a bond that would not be broken. Not by fear, not by training, not by the expectations of the world. The war dragon had chosen her. And now, together, they would face whatever came next. The courtyard remained still, as though the world itself had paused to witness the impossible. The dragon, enormous and magnificent, now sat calmly beside Lyra, its massive head resting near her hand. The bond between them was no longer tentative, it had formed, solid and undeniable. Amber eyes flicked to hers with trust, intelligence, and something that bordered on affection. Elias stood a few paces away, arms crossed, jaw tight. The pride and confidence that had defined him for years as a master dragon trainer were gone, replaced by a stark, hollow realization: he had been outmatched, not by strength, but by choice. The dragon had decided, and he was not its chosen companion. The truth hit him harder than any battle he had ever fought. The spectators began murmuring again, this time in awe and disbelief rather than fear. Trainers whispered to one another, shaking their heads. It's never happened before, one said quietly. A dragon, choosing someone over a trainer? Another added, it's like it recognizes her soul. Lyra looked down at the dragon, her heart pounding with exhilaration. She had expected fear, or at least hesitation, but there was none. Instead, there was understanding, a silent promise that neither words nor fear could break. She ran her fingers along the ridged scales of its snout and felt the subtle warmth of its breath, the pulsing power beneath its skin, the living intelligence in its eyes. You chose me, she whispered again, almost to herself. The dragon responded with a soft, low hum, vibrating through the stone beneath them. In that sound, Lyra felt confirmation, the bond was real. Mutual. Binding. Elias took a hesitant step forward, then stopped. Lyra, he began, voice tight. You don't understand what you're dealing with. That dragon, it's not just a companion, it's a war machine. Dangerous, unpredictable. You can't just. But Lyra shook her head, eyes still fixed on the creature beside her. I know, she said firmly. I feel it. I understand it, better than anyone else ever could. Her voice had a certainty that surprised even her, a strength drawn from the strange, instant connection she shared with the dragon. The dragon, sensing no threat from her words, nudged her hand with its massive snout. Smoke curled lazily from its nostrils, drifting in the morning sunlight that had finally broken through the clouds. The spectators held their collective breath as they watched the interaction, recognizing that this was more than a bond, it was destiny. A few of the other trainers stepped back, wary, some with envy flickering across their faces. Elias remained frozen, realizing that this moment would change everything. Dragons, no matter how trained, could not be commanded by force alone. Choice mattered. Connection mattered. And today, the war dragon had made that choice clear. Lyra felt a thrill surge through her chest, mingling with the awe and fear that had accompanied the encounter from the start. The dragon's massive wings flexed, creating gentle gusts that swept through the courtyard, and it shifted slightly, pressing its side closer to her. She could feel the power coiled within it, like a storm ready to be unleashed, but tempered by trust, tempered by bond. Elias finally exhaled, the sound heavy with both resignation and grudging respect. It chose you, he admitted, voice quiet. I've trained dragons for years, and I've never seen one choose like this. Lyra smiled, a mixture of wonder and determination lighting her face. Then we'll face it together, she said softly. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as one. The dragon let out a low, contented rumble, and the sound vibrated through her chest like a heartbeat. Around them, the spectators whispered and stared, realizing that they had just witnessed something extraordinary, not just a dragon being trained, but a bond forged by choice and mutual recognition. The sun climbed higher, casting a golden light over the courtyard, illuminating the shimmering scales of the war dragon and the girl who had earned its trust. In that light, Lyra felt a surge of certainty and pride. This was no longer just a creature of war or a student of battle. This was a companion, a partner, and a force that would stand with her in whatever trials lay ahead. Elias turned away, silently acknowledging defeat, while the crowd slowly began to disperse, carrying whispers of astonishment with them. But Lyra and the dragon remained where they were, bonded in a way that could not be undone, a silent understanding passing between them with every breath and glance. The war dragon had chosen its companion. And that companion was her. A new chapter had begun, not just for the dragon, not just for Lyra, but for everyone who would ever hear the story of the girl who bonded with the creature that no one could control. The courtyard, once full of expectations and rules, was now a place of wonder, possibility, and the undeniable truth: some bonds cannot be commanded. They must be earned, and sometimes, they choose you. Lyra looked into the dragon's amber eyes, her smile steady and confident. We'll be unstoppable, she whispered. The dragon responded with a low, approving hum, and for the first time, both human and beast felt a connection that would carry them beyond fear, beyond expectation, and into a future that neither could have imagined alone.